Welcome to Stoic Mindset Code, where ancient wisdom meets modern strength. I'm your host, and today we're diving deep into the timeless principles that have shaped the greatest men throughout history, from Marcus Aurelius to modern leaders who understand that true power comes not from what you say, but from how you carry yourself. If you've ever wondered why some men command instant respect, while others struggle for basic acknowledgement, the answer lies not in charisma or wealth, but in something far more fundamental: the cultivation of Stoic character. The ancient Stoics understood a truth that modern society has forgotten. Respect is not given, it's earned through disciplined action, unwavering principles, and the quiet confidence that comes from mastering oneself. Today, we're exploring 8 foundational Stoic principles that will transform not just how others see you, but how you see yourself. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This video is about reclaiming that power, building that strength, and becoming the man you were meant to be. Whether you're dealing with relationships, career challenges, or simply want to elevate your presence in every room you enter, these principles will serve as your philosophical armor in a world that constantly tests your resolve. If you're ready to embark on this journey of Stoic transformation, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. Let's begin with the first principle that separates the respected from the replaceable. The best revenge is not to be like your enemy. Marcus Aurelius. The first pillar of Stoic masculinity is understanding that your virtue is non-negotiable. The ancient Stoics believed that virtue was the only true good, and everything else, pleasure, comfort, even love, was merely preferred indifferent. This isn't coldness, it's clarity. When Cato the Younger was offered a bribe to compromise his principles, he didn't just refuse, he made it clear that his integrity wasn't even up for discussion. This is the energy you must embody. Your standards aren't suggestions. They're laws you've written for yourself. Most men negotiate their values. They bend their principles for temporary gains, thinking flexibility makes them adaptable. But what they don't realize is that every compromise chips away at their foundation until nothing solid remains. A man without firm principles is like a ship without an anchor. He drifts wherever the current takes him. The Stoic understands that respect begins with self-respect. When you hold yourself to an unwavering standard, others instinctively recognize that you're not someone to be trifled with. Your consistency becomes your reputation. Your principles become your protection. This means when someone disrespects you, your response isn't emotional, it's philosophical. You don't react from hurt feelings, you respond from philosophical conviction. Seneca taught us that every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end. Sometimes, walking away from someone who violates your standards is not just necessary, it's an act of wisdom. But here's what most miss. Having standards isn't about punishing others. It's about protecting your own philosophical development. The Stoics believed that we become like those we spend time with. If you tolerate disrespect, you're not just allowing bad behavior, you're training yourself to accept mediocrity. Epictetus, who was born a slave but became one of history's most respected philosophers, understood this better than anyone. He said, "No one can hurt you without your permission." This isn't just about emotional resilience, it's about maintaining the sacred space where your character develops. When you establish clear boundaries around your values, something remarkable happens. People stop testing you because they sense you've already tested yourself and won. Your presence communicates that you're not looking for approval. You're living from approval you've already given yourself. This principle transforms every interaction. In relationships, you're no longer the man who stays regardless of how he's treated. You're the man who brings value and expects it in return. In business, you're not the person who accepts any deal. You're the person whose word means something, because you've proven you'll walk away rather than compromise your integrity. The Stoic man operates from abundance, not scarcity. Abundance of character, abundance of principle, abundance of self-respect. This abundance makes you magnetic because most people are drowning in the scarcity of their own compromises. Remember, virtue is its own reward. When you live by Stoic principles, you don't need external validation because your actions align with your deepest values. This alignment creates an unshakable confidence that others find both inspiring and intimidating. Your homework for this principle is simple but not easy. Identify one area where you've been compromising your standards. Then, starting today, stop. Draw the line, communicate it once if necessary, and then let your actions speak. Watch how quickly people recalibrate their behavior around you. The path of virtue is often a lonely one, but it leads to a destination where true respect resides. Not the forced respect that comes from fear or manipulation, but the earned respect that comes from living with philosophical integrity. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Marcus Aurelius, the ancient Stoics, spoke of the inner citadel, that sacred space within your mind that no external force can touch. This isn't about isolation, it's about sovereignty. It's the difference between being alone and being complete, within yourself. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the ancient world, still retreated daily into this inner fortress. He understood that true strength comes not from controlling others, but from mastering the one domain that's actually under your control, your own mind. Most men leak their power through 1,000 small holes. They check their phones compulsively, seeking validation. They explain themselves to people who didn't ask for explanations. They react to every provocation, thinking engagement equals strength. But the Stoic knows that the strongest position is often the still position. Think about water. It doesn't fight the rock. It flows around it. Over time, it carves canyons. This is the power of centered calm, of preserving your energy for what truly matters. When you guard your inner citadel, you stop being at the mercy of external circumstances. This principle is revolutionary in relationships. Instead of being the man who's always available, always explaining, always reacting, you become the man with depth that can't be easily accessed. Not because you're playing games, but because you understand that your inner world is sacred territory. Seneca wrote, "Nothing can be taken from a willing mind." This means that your peace, your clarity, your sense of purpose, these can only be surrendered, never stolen. When you truly understand this, people's attempts to disturb your equilibrium become almost amusing. They're trying to shake something that's anchored in philosophy, not emotion. The practice of guarding your inner citadel involves several disciplines. First, you become selective about what information you allow into your mind. The Stoics were the original practitioners of what we now call digital minimalism. They understood that mental pollution is as real as physical pollution. Second, you develop the discipline of delayed response. Epictetus taught his students to pause between stimulus and response, to create space where wisdom can operate. This isn't about being slow, it's about being deliberate. Your reactions become choices, not reflexes. Third, you learn to find richness in solitude. The man who can't be alone without being lonely is at the mercy of others for his emotional state. But the man who has cultivated his inner world becomes a source of strength for others, not a drain on their energy. This transformation is immediately noticeable. Your presence becomes different. You walk into rooms with the quiet confidence of someone who isn't seeking anything from anyone. You listen more because you're not constantly preparing your next response. You speak less because you've learned that words have more impact when they're chosen carefully. Women, particularly, are drawn to this energy because it represents safety. Not the safety of a pushover, but the safety of someone who can't be easily rattled. In a world of reactive men, the man who maintains his center becomes a rare and valuable presence. But guarding your inner citadel isn't about building walls, it's about building depth. The deeper your inner world, the more interesting you become. People sense there are layers to you that can't be accessed through small talk or manipulation. This principle also protects you from energy vampires, those people who feed on drama, who create chaos to feel significant. When you're anchored in your inner citadel, their storms can't reach you. You become like a lighthouse, steady, reliable, unmoved by the turbulence around you. The business applications are profound. In negotiations, you're not desperate for any outcome because you're complete within yourself. In leadership, people trust you because they sense your decisions come from a centered place, not from emotional reactivity. Remember, this isn't about becoming cold or disconnected. The Stoics were deeply engaged with life. They just weren't enslaved by it. Your inner citadel becomes the foundation from which you engage with the world, not a refuge from it. Be like the rocky headland on which the waves constantly break. It stands firm, and round it the seething waters are laid to rest. Marcus Aurelius, the ancient Stoics, understood something that modern men have forgotten. Depth is more attractive than transparency. This isn't about deception or manipulation. It's about recognizing that true intimacy is earned through time and proven character, not given away through emotional vomiting on the first date. Marcus Aurelius kept his deepest thoughts in his private journal, his meditations, which were never meant to be published. He understood the difference between authentic self-expression and indiscriminate emotional sharing. The man who reveals everything has nothing left to discover. Think about the people you respect most. They likely share a common trait. They have layers. When they speak, you sense there's more beneath the surface. They don't need to prove their depth by constantly displaying it. Their depth is felt, not announced. The modern world teaches men to open up and be vulnerable without teaching them the wisdom of strategic revelation. There's a difference between vulnerability and emotional incontinence. True vulnerability is courage in the face of uncertainty. Emotional incontinence is simply poor emotional regulation disguised as authenticity. Seneca, despite being one of history's most prolific writers, was known for his measured speech in person. He understood that words have more impact when they're scarce and well chosen. When you speak less, people listen more. When you reveal less, people lean in. This principle is especially powerful in relationships. The man who shares every thought, every insecurity, every childhood trauma on the second date isn't being authentic. He's being exhausting. He's forcing intimacy instead of allowing it to develop naturally through shared experiences and proven reliability. The Stoic approach to revelation is like peeling an onion, one layer at a time, and only when the previous layer has been fully appreciated. You don't hide who you are. You reveal who you are strategically, allowing others to earn access to your deeper thoughts through their actions, not their words. This creates natural intrigue. People are wired to be fascinated by what they don't fully understand. The man with mystery isn't playing hard to get. He's naturally hard to get because he has a rich inner world that can't be accessed through surface-level interaction. But here's the key distinction. This isn't about being secretive or dishonest. The Stoics valued truth above all else. This is about understanding that some truths are precious and should be shared only with those who have proven worthy of them through their character and consistency. Epictetus taught that we should be like actors in a play, fully committed to our role but not confused about who we are off stage. Your public persona should be authentic but not complete. Save your complete self for those who have earned the privilege through demonstrated loyalty and respect. This principle protects you from emotional manipulation. When you share your deepest fears and insecurities with someone who hasn't proven trustworthy, you hand them weapons that can be used against you later. The Stoic is generous with his wisdom, but protective of his vulnerabilities. In practical terms, this means you listen more than you speak. You ask questions instead of making statements. You let others reveal themselves while you observe and evaluate. You share your experiences, but not necessarily your interpretations of those experiences. You show your character through actions rather than explanations. Women are particularly drawn to this approach because it requires them to invest effort to understand you. When something is easily obtained, it's easily dismissed. When something must be earned, it becomes valuable. You're not trying to be mysterious. You're naturally mysterious because you have depth worth exploring. The business applications are equally powerful. Leaders who reveal everything lose the ability to inspire imagination. The most influential people leave room for others to project their own interpretations and aspirations onto them. This doesn't mean being fake or inauthentic. It means being selective about when, where, and with whom you share your complete self. It means understanding that true intimacy is built through time, trust, and demonstrated character, not through information dumps disguised as honesty. The man who masters strategic mystery becomes infinitely more interesting because people sense there's always more to discover. He becomes a book worth reading slowly, not a headline to be skimmed and forgotten. When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. They are like this because they can't tell good from evil. Marcus Aurelius, the mark of a truly powerful man isn't that he doesn't feel emotions. It's that his emotions don't feel him. The ancient Stoics didn't seek to eliminate feelings. They sought to master them. There's a profound difference between suppression and sovereignty. Marcus Aurelius faced betrayals, personal losses, and the crushing weight of empire, yet his writings reveal a man who maintained his philosophical center regardless of external circumstances. This wasn't because he was unfeeling, it was because he understood that emotional reactivity is a choice, not an inevitability. Modern society has created a generation of emotionally reactive men who mistake intensity for authenticity. They explode in anger and call it passion. They collapse in despair and call it sensitivity. They chase every emotional impulse and call it living authentically. But the Stoic knows that true authenticity comes from choosing your responses rather than being chosen by them. Emotional sovereignty begins with a fundamental recognition. Your emotions are information, not instructions. When someone disrespects you, the anger you feel is data about the situation. It's not a command to lash out. When someone disappoints you, the sadness is feedback. It's not an order to shut down. Epictetus, who endured slavery and physical disability, developed the most practical framework for emotional mastery. He taught the discipline of desire and the discipline of action, wanting what happens and acting according to virtue rather than emotion. This doesn't mean becoming a robot. It means becoming responsive rather than reactive. The emotionally sovereign man is like a mountain. Storms rage around it, winds howl, rain falls, but the mountain remains unmoved. It experiences everything but is changed by nothing that's temporary. This quality makes you incredibly attractive to others because in a world of emotional volatility, stability is magnetic. In relationships, this manifests as unshakable presence. When she tests you with drama, you don't take the bait. Not because you don't care, but because you care enough to respond from wisdom rather than reaction. When she's having an emotional storm, you become the calm center she can anchor to, not another storm that amplifies the chaos. This is perhaps the most misunderstood aspect of masculine strength. Society teaches men that caring means reacting, that love means emotional involvement in every fluctuation of mood. But the Stoic understands that true care often manifests as steadiness, not volatility. Think about the best leaders you've known. They likely shared this quality. They remained calm under pressure. Not because they didn't feel the pressure, but because they had trained themselves to respond to pressure from a centered place rather than react from an overwhelmed place. The practice of emotional sovereignty involves several key disciplines. First, the discipline of pause. Between every stimulus and response, you create space. In that space, you ask not, "What do I feel like doing?" but "What would virtue have me do?" This simple shift transforms you from a victim of circumstances to a creator of your response. Second, the discipline of perspective. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself of the broader view. How would this matter in a year? In 10 years? From the perspective of eternity? This isn't about minimizing real problems. It's about right-sizing them so they don't hijack your entire emotional state. Third, the discipline of focus on what you can control. The Stoics divided all things into 3 categories: what we control, our thoughts, decisions, and actions; what we don't control, everything else; and what we influence, a narrow band where our actions can have impact. Emotional sovereignty means pouring your energy into what you control and accepting what you don't. This transformation is immediately visible to others. Your voice becomes steadier. Your movements become more deliberate. Your presence becomes more commanding because people sense you're operating from choice rather than compulsion. In business, this quality is invaluable. You make decisions from analysis rather than emotion. You negotiate from strength rather than desperation. You lead from vision rather than reaction. People trust you with important matters because they know you won't be hijacked by temporary feelings. But perhaps most importantly, emotional sovereignty frees you from being manipulated by others' emotional states. When someone tries to provoke you, they're actually revealing their own lack of sovereignty. Your calm response often de-escalates situations that could otherwise spiral out of control. Remember, the goal isn't to become emotionless. It's to become emotionally intelligent. You feel everything but are enslaved by nothing. Your emotions become tools for understanding rather than chains that bind you. This is the difference between a man who has emotions and a man who is had by them. You are not your body and hairstyle, but your capacity for choosing well. If your choices are beautiful, so too will you be. Epictetus' philosophical detachment is perhaps the most misunderstood Stoic principle in modern times. It's not about becoming cold or uncaring. It's about loving and caring from a position of strength rather than neediness. It's the difference between attachment and connection, between clinging and choosing. Marcus Aurelius loved his family deeply, yet when his beloved son Commodus disappointed him, he didn't allow that disappointment to destroy his peace. He understood that love based on control isn't love, it's possession. True love gives freedom, even the freedom to disappoint us. Most men confuse intensity with depth. They think that the more desperately they need something, the more it proves they care. But the Stoic understands that desperation is the enemy of attraction, that neediness repels the very thing it seeks to possess. The man who can love without needing, who can care without clinging, becomes irresistible because he offers something rare: unconditional positive regard without unconditional availability. This principle transforms every relationship in your life. In romance, you stop being the man who loses himself in a woman and become the man who shares himself with her. There's a profound difference. When you lose yourself, you become boring because there's no self left to be interested in. When you share yourself, you remain interesting because you maintain your center. Seneca wrote, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." Philosophical detachment allows you to embrace this truth. You can love someone completely while simultaneously being prepared to let them go if they choose to leave. This isn't pessimism, it's realism mixed with strength. The detached man doesn't chase because he doesn't need to, not because he doesn't care, but because his caring isn't contingent on reciprocation. He brings his full presence to relationships without making his peace dependent on their outcomes. This creates an incredibly attractive energy because most people are starving for attention that doesn't come with hidden demands. But detachment goes deeper than relationships. It's a philosophical stance toward all of life's temporary pleasures and pains. The Stoics understood that everything external to your character is ultimately impermanent. Your wealth can disappear, your health can fail, your reputation can be destroyed, but your capacity to choose virtue in any circumstance, that's eternal. This doesn't mean you don't plan or work toward goals. Marcus Aurelius was perhaps the most effective emperor in Roman history precisely because he could engage fully with his duties while remaining detached from their outcomes. He did his best and accepted the results without being destroyed by them. Philosophical detachment is what allows you to take risks others won't take. When you're not attached to specific outcomes, you can make bold moves because failure doesn't threaten your identity. You can start that business, approach that woman, apply for that position, knowing that your worth isn't tied to the result. This quality makes you incredibly powerful in negotiations and conflict situations. When the other party senses you're genuinely prepared to walk away, they can't manipulate you through fear of loss. Your willingness to lose what you have gives you strength to gain what you want. In relationships, this manifests as the ability to love without suffocating. You enjoy her company without demanding it. You appreciate her affection without requiring it. You contribute to her happiness without taking responsibility for it. This creates space for genuine choice, and choices made freely are always stronger than choices made from pressure. The practice of philosophical detachment requires daily discipline. You must constantly remind yourself that everything you currently enjoy, your health, your relationships, your possessions, is on loan from the universe. This isn't morbid thinking, it's liberating thinking. When you truly accept impermanence, you stop taking things for granted and start appreciating them more fully. Epictetus taught his students to practice negative visualization, imagining the loss of what they valued most, not to become pessimistic, but to build psychological resilience and deepen appreciation. The man who has mentally rehearsed loss is never blindsided by it. This principle also protects you from the manipulation of others. When someone tries to control you through the threat of withdrawal, whether it's affection, approval, or opportunity, you can respond from strength rather than desperation because you've already accepted that loss is possible. Philosophical detachment creates what psychologists now call secure attachment. The ability to be close to others without losing yourself, to care deeply without caring desperately. This is perhaps the most attractive quality a man can develop, because it signals strength, maturity, and emotional intelligence all at once. The business applications are profound. You can invest fully in projects without being attached to specific outcomes. You can take calculated risks because failure won't destroy your sense of self. You can walk away from bad deals because your peace isn't negotiable. Remember, detachment isn't indifference. It's engagement without enslavement. You participate fully in life while holding lightly to its outcomes. This paradox, caring deeply while letting go completely, is the essence of Stoic wisdom and the foundation of true masculine strength. First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. Epictetus, the ancient Stoics, understood a fundamental truth that modern men have forgotten. Not every battle deserves your energy, not every conversation deserves your participation, and not every person deserves your attention. Selective engagement isn't about being antisocial, it's about being strategically social. Marcus Aurelius, despite being emperor of Rome with countless demands on his time, was renowned for his ability to focus on what truly mattered while letting the trivial pass by unnoticed. He understood that attention is your most valuable resource, and like any resource, it must be allocated wisely. Most men scatter their energy like seeds in a windstorm. They respond to every text immediately, engage in every argument, attend every social gathering, and wonder why they feel exhausted and unfulfilled. They mistake busyness for productivity, reaction for response, and availability for value. The Stoic man operates differently. He has developed the rare ability to discern what deserves his engagement and what deserves his elegant neglect. This isn't about being rude or dismissive. It's about being intentional with the one life you have to live. Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." Selective engagement is the practical application of this wisdom. Every yes to something trivial is a no to something significant. Every moment spent in meaningless argument is a moment not spent building something beautiful. This principle dramatically transforms your relationships. Instead of being the man who's always available to everyone, you become the man whose availability is earned. People begin to value your time because you clearly value it yourself. Your presence becomes more impactful because it's more intentional. In romantic relationships, this means you don't engage with every emotional outburst, don't respond to every test, don't defend against every accusation. You learn to distinguish between the conversations worth having and the dramas worth ignoring. When she throws emotional bait, you don't always have to take it. Sometimes the most powerful response is no response at all. But selective engagement goes deeper than just relationships. It's about curating your entire life experience, the information you consume, the entertainment you choose, the conversations you participate in. All of these shape your mind and character. The Stoic is as careful about what he allows into his consciousness as he is about what he allows into his home. This means you stop scrolling mindlessly through social media, feeding your mind junk food disguised as information. You stop watching news that makes you angry about things you can't control. You stop engaging in gossip that diminishes both you and others. You become a curator of your own experience. The practice of selective engagement requires developing what the Stoics called prosoche, continuous attention to the present moment and conscious choice in every action. Before you engage with anything, a conversation, an opportunity, a relationship, you ask, does this align with my values? Does this move me toward my goals? Does this deserve the irreplaceable resource of my time and energy? This discipline creates natural authority. When you speak, people listen because they know you don't waste words on trivialities. When you engage, people pay attention because your engagement is selective and therefore valuable. When you offer advice, people take it seriously because they know it comes from careful consideration, not casual opinion. Epictetus taught that we should treat our attention like a fortress, carefully guarded, selectively opened, and never surrendered carelessly. The man who guards his attention jealously becomes magnetic because most people are giving theirs away for free to anyone who asks. This principle also protects you from energy vampires, those people who feed on drama, who create chaos to feel significant, who demand constant attention without offering equivalent value. When you practice selective engagement, these people naturally filter themselves out of your life because they can't get what they need from you. In business, selective engagement means you don't chase every opportunity or say yes to every meeting. You develop the confidence to say no to good opportunities so you can say yes to great ones. You understand that being selective doesn't make you difficult, it makes you valuable. The transformation is immediately noticeable. You become calmer because you're not constantly reacting to external stimuli. You become more focused because your energy isn't scattered across 100 different concerns. You become more influential because your words and actions carry more weight. People begin to seek your opinion because they know it's considered, not casual. They value your time because they know it's not freely given to everyone. They respect your boundaries because they're clear and consistent. Remember, selective engagement isn't about becoming a hermit or developing superiority complex. It's about recognizing that your time, energy, and attention are finite resources that should be invested wisely, not spent carelessly. It's about becoming intentional in a world that profits from your distraction. The man who masters selective engagement doesn't just command respect, he commands his own life. He becomes the author of his own story rather than a character in everyone else's drama. This is true freedom, and freedom is the foundation of all respect. The best leader is the one whose existence is barely known by the people. Next comes the one they love and praise. Next comes the one they fear. The worst one is the one that people despise. Lao Tzu, adopted by Stoic philosophy. True leadership has nothing to do with titles, positions, or the number of people who report to you. Marcus Aurelius understood this better than perhaps any leader in history. He led the greatest empire the world had ever seen, not through force or manipulation, but through the quiet authority that comes from living according to philosophical principles. The Stoic leader doesn't lead by demanding compliance. He leads by inspiring elevation. People follow him not because they have to, but because they want to become the kind of person he already is. This is the difference between management and leadership, between coercion and inspiration. Most men mistake dominance for leadership. They think that being the loudest voice in the room, the most aggressive personality, or the most controlling presence makes them a leader. But these are actually signs of insecurity masquerading as strength. The true leader is often the calmest person in the room, the one who speaks last, but whose words carry the most weight. Seneca, who advised emperors and influenced the course of history, understood that leadership begins with self-leadership. You cannot guide others to places you haven't been yourself. You cannot inspire virtue in others if you haven't cultivated it in yourself. You cannot command respect if you don't first respect yourself enough to live according to your highest principles. The Stoic leader operates from three fundamental principles: justice, courage, and wisdom. Justice means treating others fairly and working for the common good, not just personal gain. Courage means doing what's right even when it's difficult or unpopular. Wisdom means making decisions based on long-term consequences rather than short-term comfort. This type of leadership is immediately recognizable and incredibly attractive. People are starving for authentic authority in a world full of false bravado. When they encounter someone who leads from genuine strength rather than compensated weakness, they're naturally drawn to follow. In relationships, Stoic leadership means you set the tone through your example, not your demands. You don't tell her how to behave. You show her what behavior you respect through your responses. You don't control her choices. You create an environment where her best choices become natural. This is infinitely more powerful than any attempt at direct control. The Stoic leader understands that real power is influence, not authority. Authority can be given or taken away by external circumstances. Influence is earned through consistent character and can only be lost through inconsistent behavior. When you lead through character, your influence extends far beyond your official sphere of authority. Epictetus taught that we become what we repeatedly do. The Stoic leader makes this visible to others. His discipline becomes infectious. His calm becomes stabilizing. His focus becomes inspiring. People around him naturally begin to elevate their own standards because excellence is contagious when it's genuine. This principle transforms every area of your life. In business, you don't need to micromanage because people want to meet the standard you've set through your example. In friendships, you naturally become the person others come to for advice because your life demonstrates wisdom in action. In family relationships, you become the rock that others can depend on because your character is reliable. The practice of Stoic leadership requires constant self-examination. Marcus Aurelius spent time each day reflecting on his decisions, his reactions, and his character development. He asked himself hard questions. Did I act from virtue today? Did my decisions serve the greater good? Did I lead from strength or react from weakness? This self-reflection isn't narcissistic, it's necessary. The leader who doesn't examine his own character will inevitably lead others astray. The man who isn't constantly working on himself has no business trying to influence others. But here's what sets Stoic leadership apart from other leadership philosophies. It's not about getting people to follow you. It's about inspiring people to follow their own highest nature. The Stoic leader doesn't create dependence. He creates independence. He doesn't build followers. He builds leaders. This approach requires tremendous confidence because you're literally working yourself out of a job. You're teaching others to think for themselves, to act from their own virtue, to lead their own lives with philosophical integrity. This is scary for insecure leaders, but liberating for secure ones. The Stoic leader also understands the principle of leading by example in adversity. Anyone can lead when things are going well. The true test of leadership comes in crisis, in conflict, in moments of uncertainty. This is when your philosophical preparation pays dividends. When others panic, you remain calm. When others blame, you take responsibility. When others despair, you find solutions. Not because you don't feel the pressure, but because you've trained yourself to respond to pressure from virtue rather than react from emotion. This quality makes you incredibly valuable in any organization, relationship, or community. You become the person others turn to when things get difficult because they've observed that you don't abandon your principles under pressure. You become a source of stability in an unstable world. The ultimate goal of Stoic leadership isn't to accumulate power over others. It's to empower others to live according to their highest potential. When you lead this way, you don't just command respect, you inspire transformation. And transformation is the highest form of leadership. Remember, you're already leading whether you realize it or not. Your behavior influences others constantly. The question isn't whether you're a leader, it's what kind of leader you are. Are you leading others toward virtue or away from it? Are you inspiring elevation or enabling mediocrity? Wealth consists in not having great possessions, but in having few wants. Epictetus. The ultimate expression of Stoic masculinity is the ability to walk away from anything that compromises your character, and mean it. This isn't about being stubborn or difficult. It's about understanding that some things are simply not worth having if the price is your soul. Cato the Younger chose death over submission to Caesar because he understood that some compromises are so fundamental that making them would mean ceasing to be who you are. This might seem extreme, but the principle applies to every area of life. There are some prices too high to pay, even for things you want badly. Most men are prisoners of their attachments. They stay in jobs that drain their life force because they're afraid of financial uncertainty. They remain in relationships that diminish them because they're afraid of being alone. They tolerate disrespect from friends and family because they're afraid of conflict or abandonment. But the Stoic man has cultivated something more valuable than any external thing: the knowledge that he can walk away from anything and still be complete. This isn't because he doesn't value external things. It's because he values his character more than any external thing. This principle transforms every negotiation in your life. When you're genuinely prepared to walk away, you negotiate from strength rather than desperation. The other party senses that you have options, that you're choosing to be there rather than needing to be there. This fundamentally shifts the dynamic in your favor. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Accept the things to which fate binds you, and love the people with whom fate brings you together." But notice what he didn't say. He didn't say to accept people who consistently violate your values or situations that compromise your character. There's a difference between accepting what you cannot change and accepting what you should not tolerate. The power to walk away begins with building a life so rich, so aligned with your values, so fulfilling in its own right, that you don't need any particular person or situation to complete it. This doesn't mean isolation, it means independence. Independence of spirit, independence of character, independence of purpose. When you've built this kind of life, walking away becomes not just possible, but sometimes necessary. You walk away from the job that asks you to compromise your integrity, even if it pays well. You walk away from the relationship that requires you to shrink yourself to keep the peace. You walk away from the friendship that's built on gossip and complaint rather than mutual growth. This ability is incredibly attractive to others because most people are trapped by their fears and attachments. When they meet someone who is genuinely free, not reckless but free, they're drawn to that energy. They want to understand how you developed such confidence, such calm in the face of potential loss. The practical application of this principle requires preparation on multiple levels: financial preparation, living below your means so you always have options; emotional preparation, developing a rich inner life so you don't need constant external validation; spiritual preparation, connecting with purposes larger than yourself so your meaning isn't dependent on any particular circumstance. But perhaps most importantly, it requires philosophical preparation, deeply understanding that your worth isn't determined by what you have, who you're with, or what you do. Your worth is inherent, unchangeable, and unassailable as long as you live according to virtue. Seneca, who was incredibly wealthy, practiced voluntary discomfort regularly to remind himself that he could survive with less. He would eat simple foods, wear rough clothes, sleep on hard surfaces, not as punishment, but as preparation. He was training himself to be unattached to comfort so that his decisions wouldn't be compromised by the fear of losing it. This principle is revolutionary. In relationships, The man who is willing to walk away from a relationship that doesn't serve him is paradoxically more likely to be in a relationship that does serve him. Women sense when a man is with them by choice rather than need, and choice is infinitely more attractive than desperation. It's also transformative in business. The entrepreneur who is willing to close a business that's not working is more likely to build one that does work. The employee who is willing to quit a job that doesn't align with his values is more likely to find one that does. The investor who is willing to accept losses on bad investments is more likely to make profits on good ones. But walking away isn't about burning bridges or making dramatic exits. The Stoic understands that sometimes the most powerful statement is made quietly, with dignity, without explanation or justification. You simply remove your energy from situations that don't deserve it and redirect it toward opportunities that do. The man who has mastered this principle sleeps peacefully at night because he knows he's not trapped by anything. He wakes up each morning making conscious choices about how to spend his day rather than unconsciously repeating patterns that don't serve him. This is true freedom, not the absence of constraints, but the ability to choose your constraints wisely. Not the ability to do whatever you want, but the strength to want only what aligns with your highest values. Not escape from all responsibility, but the wisdom to take responsibility only for what truly belongs to you. When you reach this level of philosophical development, you don't just command respect from others. You respect yourself so deeply that external validation becomes irrelevant. You've become your own source of strength, your own center of gravity, your own definition of success. This is the goal of Stoic masculinity, not to control others, but to free yourself, not to accumulate power over external things, but to develop unshakable power within yourself, not to be feared or admired, but to be genuinely worthy of both fear and admiration. These 8 principles, virtue, inner citadel, strategic mystery, emotional sovereignty, philosophical detachment, selective, engagement, character-based leadership, and the power of walking away, are not just relationship advice or career strategies. They are the foundation of a life lived with philosophical integrity. Marcus Aurelius reminded us that the best revenge is not to be like your enemy. The best response to a world that often rewards mediocrity is to pursue excellence. The best answer to chaos is to become a center of calm. The best reaction to disrespect is to become so genuinely respectable that such treatment becomes impossible. These principles work because they're based on truth. The truth about human nature, the truth about what creates genuine attraction and respect, the truth about what builds lasting fulfillment and inner peace. They're not tricks or tactics, they're transformations. The journey of implementing these principles isn't easy. There will be moments when walking away feels impossible, when maintaining your standards seems like it will cost you everything you want. But this is exactly when the principles matter most. Anyone can maintain virtue when it's convenient. The Stoic maintains virtue especially when it's costly. Remember, respect isn't something you can demand or manipulate into existence. It's something you earn through consistent character, principled action, and the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you're living according to your highest values. If these principles have resonated with you, if you've felt that deep recognition of truth that the Stoics called catalepsis, then your journey begins now. Not tomorrow, not when circumstances are perfect, but right now with the very next decision you make. Subscribe to Stoic Mindset Code for more content that will help you build unshakable character in an unstable world. Share this video with someone who needs to hear these truths. And most importantly, begin implementing these principles today. The world needs more men who understand that true strength comes from philosophy, not physique. That real power comes from character, not control. That lasting respect comes from virtue, not validation. You have the tools, you have the knowledge, you have the choice. The only question now is, what will you choose to become? Remember Marcus Aurelius's final wisdom. Confine yourself to the present. Start building your Stoic character today, one principle at a time, one choice at a time, one moment at a time. The respect you've always wanted is waiting on the other side of the man you're willing to become.